Really appreciate you coming on. Like I said, it's really cool to kind of get to chat with you about, several different things, obviously from the bodybuilding perspective, being a bodybuilder, being an IFBB pro, and then, being a judge is a really cool aspect too to talk about. So I think it's going to be a really good conversation. Kind of tell us a little bit about you and we'll get into it from there.
Sure, I'd love to. So everybody's, not everybody. I hate when people say that. Like everybody asks me, but quite a few people, right? They're just curious about it. So they're asking, like, "Hey, how did you get into bodybuilding?" And quite honestly, they know it's like something that like just fell into my lap. It wasn't anything that I ever aspired to be. I have friends and colleagues and fellow competitors that have been in this thing since their teens, and it's something that they've really enjoyed and put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into. Not that I haven't, I just that wasn't my those weren't my goals at the time. I grew up, an athlete, doing track and field and different activities. So the athleticism is there, and the workout aspect is there, but it's not that level of discipline that you're taking it to when you're a competitor. So that, you've got a foundation there. So it started out with that, right? But then after I graduated college, I was like, yeah, right. I graduated. I just want to go hang out. Not necessarily like party, but I'm like, I want to hang out. I want to do all the things, right? Eat all the food. And so I did that for a while, but then after, so I have three kids. So I have twins that are 13, and then I have one that will be 11th on the 17th of next month. I can't believe I'm already saying that. So after I had them, I was like skinny fat, what you would call that. So metabolism is high. So you're eating kind of whatever, whenever, but you're not necessarily gaining a lot of body fat, right? So, but you're still unhealthy just because you don't have a certain level of body, 30-40% body fat doesn't mean you're unhealthy, right? So you got to be aware of those things. And so I was like, you know what, let me just really take control of this. Let me get a better handle on this thing, and let me just start with group fitness classes, right? So I actually started with Pilates on the reformer, and so I taught that for a long time, so probably for about 6-7 years. I got certified in that, and I enjoyed it. Uh, it was this piece of equipment called the Megaformer. So a lot of the exercises that you could do on that, you could do like out of the gym. You could do squats, you could do shoulder raises and presses and lunges and all those things. And so I'm like, this is great. I like how I'm responding to that. I was like, let me try some of this out in the gym. And then so I started taking group fitness classes at the 24-hour fitness. In Castle Hills, actually. So that's a little suburb of, I don't know, maybe about 30 minutes north of Dallas. And so my instructor there, her name is Nicole, and I always give her credit. She was the one who kind of introduced me to it. I was like, she looks great. I was like, how, I don't ever attach my motivation to like people, but I was like, I really like how her frame looks, how that muscle sits on her frame. She doesn't look masculine. She looked amazing. And so I was like, how can I get to that? What did you do? And then so she kind of told me about bodybuilding, and we kind of talked about different coaches in the area, and I knew nothing about any of this at all. She was just kind of like, think about this as like a beauty pageant with muscles for men and women. And so I was like, that sounds interesting enough. And so I started training. That was back in 2013. And so I located kind of a coach in 2014 in January. And I was really nervous about the whole thing because it's expensive. This is a very expensive hobby. So it's a commitment. So I'm just like, do I want my diet to look like this every day? Because right, when you're competing, your day is pretty much set. Like from the time you wake up to the time you go to bed, this is what you're doing. And I'm like, I've never had, just have had my schedule so regimented in nature like that. So I was like, this is a commitment. So I thought about it. And then eventually I started working with my first coach at the time, who was great, very knowledgeable, still is, in June of 2014. And so then we kind of came up with a game plan. And he's like, hey, let's pick this show at the end of the year in December 2014. It's going to be small, not a national qualifier, so you're good. And I was just like, great. And so I went through this whole process that I've never gone through before. And it was the most interesting thing, and just kind of learning all the science behind what you can't eat, what time of day. I didn't know what a macro was. I'm like, what are people talking about when they're referencing this? And so I had no idea what all of that was. And so just learning about all of that, it was a lot. It was intense, right? And I can honestly tell you that my first show, I mean, obviously you're just kind of learning. So I'm not taking it as seriously as as when you become a pro, or maybe when you reaching, I didn't know what a pro card was. That's not something that was part of my aspirations or on my vision board. So, I'm sneaking in some things here and there. Anybody who tells you they don't is not telling you the truth. So I'm just like, well, not even sneaking. I'm just like, well, this is healthy. This granola bar, right? Whatever. It's none of my plan, but I can probably eat it and be fine. So that type of thing. My mindset really wasn't like how, like what it would be like, right? If I had like a serious goal attached, like an end goal, right? With that. So that said, did my first show December 29th, 2014. And I actually, with that, even with all that said, I actually did well. And I was just like, imagine what I could do if we, really like honed in on this thing. What if we really, did everything that what we were supposed to do, follow the plan to the T, what can we do with it? And I actually had a lot of fun with the process. It was intense, but I actually had a lot of fun, and I met a lot of amazing people. I'll never forget, they hosted these posing classes, and this was back in 2014, and some of those girls that I've met and guys are still my very best friends to this day from those posing classes. And so a lot of it, why I've continued the journey is the people, nothing else other than people. Because anybody who says like, because the diet is great is not telling you the truth. There's got to be a reason that you're sticking with this. There's got to be a reason that you're making this lifestyle change, essentially. So so I did well. I was like, well, let's just see what we can do. Let's really just put our eggs into this basket and keep going with it. Okay, maybe now I am aspiring to get a pro card. Once you start learning people in the industry, learning what they do, even opportunities that are available to you within the industry. That's something you're like, hey, I think that's really cool. I want to keep going and, to see how far we can get. And so 2015, I did 2 more shows. And at that time, and so they were overall wins. And so my coach was like, let's stop wasting money. Let's just see what we can really do, right? He's like, you can keep doing show to show to show, but let's attach some goals to these. And so we attached a pro card to it. We're like, hey, this is what we want to do. And so 2015, we went to Miami Nationals. I know it's called something different. I get in trouble for calling it that. Nationals or whatever it's called now. I was in Miami in November. First national show, I took 5th. I was so excited, and I was like, okay, yeah, this is where I'm meant to be. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. So along the way, I'm just meeting even more amazing people. My best friend, Devaney Martin, she's a wellness pro. She lives in New York. That is my best friend, and we met competing in figure at the time. That is my very, 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 very best friend. And so I can say that there's been a lot of good that's come out of this. In addition to like, hey, it's a lifestyle change. I've met some really amazing, supportive people. So 2016 rolls around. I said, I want nothing more than this pro card, and we're going to put all of our eggs in this one basket. And if it doesn't happen for me, it wasn't meant to be. And so we went to USA's, and I think it is still called that, June 28th through 27th through the 31st or something like that, or July, excuse me, in Vegas. And that was a lot of fun. It was a fun trip. And I got to compete with another one of my good friends. And yeah, we got the pro card there. And that was one of the greatest feelings in life. That was a time when there was an extreme amount of competitors. Now, it's kind of, maybe it's, the average class size, I don't know, it might be 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 average. I'm going on average. So there could be more, there could be less, but that, we had, oh gosh, upwards of 40 girls in a class. And to win in a class that size that really says something about a number of things. So I won't go into all of that, but it was a really big accomplishment for me. And I was excited. And I feel like I'm talking too much, but just bringing back these memories, I'm like, this is so great. And this, talking to you about it, reminds me of why I'm still here, right? It's 2023, so almost 10 years later, why I'm still doing what I'm doing. So that's kind of what led me to well, kind of the backstory, I guess, is kind of what you were asking for, like why I'm in front of you, why I'm still involved in the industry. And it's 100% because of the people, especially NPC Texas is the greatest. I'm so lucky to have started in the organization in that state. I mean, it really doesn't get better that it's a competitive sport, but in the state of Texas, you won't find a more supportive group. To me, I'm biased. Of course, I haven't gone anywhere else, but I couldn't imagine being part of any other region than NPC Texas.
So you mentioned the relationships and, you know, growing up really in a sport with people, you know, being at the same level. What is it like though, whenever you start to make, and of course it's different for each relationship, each person kind of has different views on success for other people, but was there anything was there any relationship that were relationships that were strained because you were succeeding and you were having, you know, you were getting victories, or you were seeing progress, even if it wasn't necessarily in a victorious way, just like, hey, look at the, you know, the great progress I'm making. Was there anything that you thought that was weird, just you never thought like, hey, this person, can't believe they're not being supportive, you know, it seems like they maybe are you know, jealous, or whatever other words you want to use?
Absolutely. And you know, the interesting thing about that is that it's not necessary. When I say NPC Texas is supportive, that's what I mean. But the interesting thing that you say that it's not necessarily the people that are inside of the industry that feel that way. It's the people that are outside of the industry that feel that way. You know, the people, your friends, right? So, and it's not even like maybe the people that you've grown up with, or maybe friendships that you've developed, you know, outside of the industry from college, or just from being around. And so those, to me, just for me, like, have been the relationships that have been the most strained. One, from something like, hey, okay, when you're competing, or maybe not even when you're competing, you're just like, hey, I'm trying to, I've created this lifestyle for myself. So there's things that I can no longer do, or there's things that I no longer want to do. Maybe that includes like going to, you know, a party or a club or this or that, right? And that's just something that bodybuilding has completely changed my view on just how I'm taking care of myself, what I'm doing on my day to day, and it just really my priorities have shifted and my priorities have changed. And there's a lot of people that are like, hey, right, that it changes because I'm succeeding in this, or I'm feeling great about my relationship with this, or I'm doing well in this, I'm liking this, so this priority has to change. So that's where the strained friendships and relationships for me have come versus inside. I mean, because I feel like I can feel that from people, right? It's not something that they've got to outwardly come out and say from a competitor perspective, like I'm jealous, or I'm not going to hang out with you. You can, that type of thing, you can absolutely feel. And this, you know, is something that you can very easily disassociate yourself with that type of negative energy. And that's all that I do. And that's why I'm able to, because if I did that, I probably would have given up on something like this long ago, or exited the industry long ago. So as soon as I feel that, because I'm a good reader of people and things and stuff like that. So whenever I feel something like that, any tension, that I absolutely will disassociate myself from it, period, and have no problem with it, because I'm like, we're here for the same thing, right? We're here. We know it's a competitive sport. You don't have to be like up and face supportive and all those things, but we know why we're here. And it's for everybody to, you know, everybody, maybe they want to get to the same level, maybe we want to get a higher level, but somebody's got to get there, right? So if we're all sitting around mad and jealous of each other, then there's really no reason, you know, for us to be, especially in an individualized competitive sport like this.
Yeah. And when it comes to like growing in the sport and having more experiences and kind of learning new things, you kind of mentioned like obviously that first prep and that first show, you're learning so much about just what bodybuilding is, and, you know, what getting on stages and all that. But even past that, like, what did you have any opinions, any, you know, very strongly held opinions about things or ideas that completely have shifted just since being in the sport, whether that's about the sport or just about fitness or about health in general?
Oh, and I think that everybody has. And I'll talk about the good part, right? So the good part is like my lifestyle, right? Like I didn't know anything about like, and I will be very candid with you. Like today, I'm not tracking macros to the T. Like, but what bodybuilding has provided for me is like a foundation, like a structure of that. Like I know pretty much how what I'm supposed to be eating, what protein. I know that I'm supposed to be eating more protein, less fat, that type of thing, right? So I've kind of tailored my overall diet and eating habits around the things that I've learned through bodybuilding. So that opinion has changed because I'm coming in thinking like I have to eat like that all the time. I've got to have like this limited restricted meals all the time, which if you're lifting heavy and if you're lifting and being active, that's not really sustainable, right? That's just for in-season competition for the most part. So my opinion of that has changed. Like I'm like, hey, I don't have to eat, little lettuce and little, you know what I'm saying? Like little bird food to be able to maintain like a healthy weight and maintain a physique that I'm happy with. So I'm able to do that on my own now, just in off season, just like right now, right? Like I'm able to do that without, gaining a lot of body fat or something like that. So my opinion of that has changed. Now, about the sport in general, of course it has. There's it especially now, without diving super deep into all of that. I think there's a certain level that I'm comfortable with. Like I don't want to say pushing, but you take your body to a certain level, and I'm like, hindsight, it's like I absolutely have to do this and have to take my body to this certain level to get like this. But now would I do that again? No, probably not. Just because there's a lot of things. We all know that there's a lot of things that come along with getting to a certain level of body fat, getting to a physique that you're happy with. So just hindsight, there's certain opinions now, views have changed about a lot of those things. So right now I'm very happy with how I'm able to maintain my frame and my physique now. Just utilizing like my everyday supplements, my food, my diet, my exercise, and things like that. So hindsight, I definitely would have or probably will do some things different.
This episode is sponsored by Fountain TRT. Fountain wants to help you with your potential low T. Why do I say potential low T? Because a large percentage of men don't even know they're suffering from low T. They simply live with the symptoms that include weight gain, sluggishness, and erectile dysfunction and have no idea of the cause. Fountain wants to help you figure out if low T is your issue and help you get your levels back to a healthy range with a topical cream. The Fountain team are medical professionals who have years of experience in the industry and expertise in TRT. These labs are often covered by insurance and you may not have to pay anything out of pocket. The topical treatment is easy to use, just apply it once daily to your shoulder area. Most men start seeing results immediately. So if you're ready to gain back your energy, drive, and mental clarity, lose that stubborn weight, and just generally feel happier, check out Fountain TRT and use the link below to support the weight room and claim your $1 evaluation. This episode is brought to you by Move Your Body Apparel, a Lexington-based, community-ran premium activewear brand that promotes the importance of daily movement. For the rest of the year, MYB is donating a percentage of every order to the Special Olympics of Kentucky. Save 20% off your first order with the link below or use code TWR20 online at mybapparel.com. And you mentioned the idea of like being happy with the physique, and figuring out kind of how to manage that, maintain that, things like that. But as a bodybuilder, obviously the point of bodybuilding is to build the body, it's to shape the body, the physique. And how do you deal mentally with like accepting the potential, accepting like not even, okay, I'm not at my potential yet, but I'm happy with what I have now. Like, how do you psychologically, I guess, work around like where you are versus where you want to be versus where you can be?
Okay, so the question is, okay, so like today, we'll talk about today, like how like psychologically, like when I'm getting up and I'm looking in the mirror saying like, am I happy with what I'm seeing versus like, okay, I need to look like that.
That, I guess, yeah, even that perspective too, is another one to think about. I was thinking more like, you're getting on stage and you're thinking like this physique right here, even if you're winning, you're thinking like, okay, I have to be better next time than the next
Oh
year.
gosh,
Yeah.
it's a mental mind F. And anyone who tells you that it's not, is not telling the truth. Because I feel like you need to be like as honest in this industry, because it can be a lot mentally, even more so than physically, because most people like they're working out's no, that's nothing, right? I'm an hour and 15 in the gym, but that the mentality of like striving for perfection always is there 24/7. And even when you're not, competing, but we'll talk for the sake of this, we will talk about that. So you can win top first place, but we are our own worst critics, right? So you look at that picture and be like, oh man, what if I would have, oh, we should have done, or what if I wouldn't have eaten that last carb, or what if I would have taken this fat out, or what if I mean, think about it. Okay, like, could you imagine saying something like that to yourself 24 hours a day, 7 days a week? And even when you're not particularly getting on stage, you're looking in the mirror saying like, ah, that line is there. Like, think about, like, the average person is not saying like, I can't see definition, I can't see lines in my legs, I can't see lines in my shoulders, like I can't even imagine, like, I there are times when I'm like, what was it like not thinking like that, like not looking in the mirror, not looking at a picture saying like, God, you know what? I'm just going to add in one more leg day, or you know what? I'm just going to add in one more shoulder day, or you know what? I think I just need to add this in. So the satisfactory piece is really never there, right? But you want to stay motivated to do all that you can do, knowing that, okay, I'm not competing at this time, so I've got to be happy with this. But that level of like complete satisfaction, you know what? Honestly, I don't think it'll ever be there. Not for me, right? Because granted, you're not. I never look at it's hard for me, I should say, to look at like somebody doing a show, or somebody doing competition, or some Olympia just happened, right? And for me to be like, I like that, I want to look like that, because that look overall, for me, I don't prefer. What I do prefer, but I do like, I'm gonna say, because I'm a bodybuilder, like, defined legs or defined shoulders. You're looking for, you're like, okay, I want some striations, even though you're not at that level of body fat. But looking at those things, you're just like, okay, I'm gonna do something different with my diet, or you're immediately like, I'm gonna get back on my diet. Immediately like, I'm gonna do this, like, I'm gonna do that. So it's very difficult to kind of manage all of that mentally, right? Because there's really, I mean, I don't want to say there's nothing you can do, but I mean, but really, there's got to be a point to where it's like, okay, this is good, this is enough. Let me relax. I'm just going to maintain doing what I'm doing, which is what I try to do. But that level of satisfaction, I don't think even when you're competing, even when you win first place, that's something that I think is really hard for us to find.
And when it comes to like, if you took a soundbite of that and somebody that doesn't do bodybuilding, doesn't think bodybuilding is a healthy, mentally thing to do, what would your what would your response to be that to like, of course, you can't, like you're saying, you can't ever be perfect. You can chase it. You're never fully satisfied. You might be happy with the way you look, but you're always striving for a more defined or bigger, whatever it is. Like, what would your rebuttal be to somebody who says this is why people shouldn't do bodybuilding, because they don't have that, like, they don't have that mental, I don't even know what to call it, but that mental, I guess, satisfaction, or that mental rest.
Exactly. The stability that'll allow them to be like, hey, I can do this without, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not going to be messed up, basically.
Right.
I'm trying to say that for lack of a better term. But what I would say is, so when you start doing it for reasons that maybe you didn't initially start out, I tell people, like, I'm doing this because I enjoy it, I like the people. I feel like you've got to figure out the reason why you're doing it. If it's solely because I need to look like this, I need to do this, I need to do this, then that's never going to come, because people who don't do, they're attaching what they should look like to a person. So genetically, we're not all going to look the same, be the same, do the same, all those things. So I try not to attach bodybuilding, or how I felt I should look, when I competed to somebody, right, I just, would try and tell, hey, let's look back at 2014. And I still have those pictures today, like my 2014 Tonya to the last time I competed Tonya. And that's the goal. That's what you're striving for. That's who you're striving to be better than striving to look like, Sid Gillen, or striving to look like Sarah Villegas, or striving to look like someone. So just always, I would tell them to just patience and strive to be better than yourself, right? Because that's what you're doing. You're getting better each and every time, right? So I would try and put them in that sort of a mindset versus like, I need to look like that person, so I'm not looking perfect, because that's what I would do. That's what I would do. Like shoulders don't look like that, so it's not that's not what they want, or something like that. So this, always try and tell them like, yeah, just be better than what you were a year ago, 2 years ago, or 3 years ago.
Yeah. And I think in today's day and age, there's so much like, there's so much of a push for like almost an over acceptance, not like, hey, I'm fine how I am. I'm good how I am. And to a certain degree that is true, but also you have to be willing to look at your whether you want to call them faults or whether you want to call them weak points, whatever it is, you have to look at those things and be honest. And I think we've lost that honesty with ourselves. We've lost that honesty to be able to say that about another person, or really to another person, without being, without bullying, without sounding or being called a bully, or being, labeled as something, instead of just being like, hey, this is something that I think you could do better at. This is something. And because whenever we can't hear that from the earliest of ages, whenever we can't be told that from our parents or our teachers or our friends, we're not, it's not something that's instilled in us. And I think it's become over dramatized, where it's important to, of course you don't want to go around shaming people, but you also don't want to go around just blatantly not being honest with yourself even.
100%. Yeah, no, I totally agree.
So moving into kind of like the judging area, how do you take like your experience as a competitor, and especially like looking back like 2014, 15, 16, that time frame, and apply that to judging? How does how are things similar, but how do you also have to kind of, look through the lens of today?
Yeah, sure. So I started out as an expediter. And so for those who don't know what expediting does, so expediter is if you've ever gone to a show and you've been backstage or even in the audience sitting. So those are the people that kind of make sure that the show runs smoothly and all competitors know exactly where they're supposed to be. They're lining them up on stage, backstage, on stage. So just making sure that the competitor pretty much has everything they need in order to be successful on show day, in terms of how the show is run, right? So we don't ever want a competitor to be confused or miss a class or anything like that. So I started doing that. Ooh, it had to be very shortly after, let's see, maybe end of 2015, into 2016. And then I did that for 2 years and I really enjoyed it. Like there's nothing like, and that time I was still competing myself. At the, that was end of, yeah. So going into the pro level, I was still competing myself. So there really is nothing like seeing the competitor compete for the first time, because I know how that was for me. It was nerve wracking. It was exciting. It was all the things, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what was going on. So just really being in that atmosphere and seeing their energy I really liked that. But, as I kind of like, competing myself, and so I'm a big candidate of realistic feedback. Hey, if, like you said, be honest with me about what it is. Like you know what I'm saying? Like sometimes some of the feedback you can get, you're like, I'm not sure, how much sense, like be direct, right? So, and, I would hear, my friends just say they were disappointed with, feedback, maybe they didn't get it or something like that. So, I was like, well, I want to be, what can I do? I was like, there's something that I want to do to make sure that The competitors feel, like they're not confused about their feedback. They feel like they can ask feedback at any time. They can get it honest. And that's something that I really wanted to do, kind of going forward. Like I said, just competing myself, and receiving my own feedback. And so, like I said, the year before COVID, was when I started. And I have enjoyed it ever since. So as long as I'm able to do it, I absolutely will, for the state of Texas. So look, to your question, it's like, how has that transition, kind of been, now looking through the lens, of a judge, and you see how, so for example, posing classes, I'd be like, how important is this? Why am I spending so much money on posing? Like, this is completely ridiculous. Why am I spending, hundreds of dollars? I have a point, I promise. Why am I spending hundreds of dollars on this? Like, can I look at like YouTube or teach myself or something like that? Or why am I spending hundreds of dollars on my hair, my makeup? Can I do these types of things myself? Like, why am I spending all this money? Like, I'm working out, right? This is all you should see. This is all that you need, right? But with bodybuilding, it's 150% more than just a physique. 150% more. It is your entire package. So bodybuilding, I mean, we're all working out, so you can absolutely tell who has put in like the time and effort, because bodybuilding is like an art in every way, not just how your physique looks, right? So you can really tell, how much effort, and time people have put into perfecting their art, right? And that's, from their posing, right, and their hair and makeup. But posing is a big deal, to me, and confidence, right? And that comes with practicing, that comes with posing. So I now can see, because posing, that's a must, right? So inferior posing is something that's my pet peeve. I'm like, we've had 6 months, 5 months, 4 months, 12 weeks, however long, to perfect this. So posing shouldn't be a problem. But now I can see why they tell us, hey, this is the entire package. This isn't just somebody with muscles up here, right? This is, we're taking this seriously. And it is a huge difference when you see somebody up there and it's just, I wish you could see it. When you just see someone up there that really just makes you put your pencil down, and they've got the confidence, they've got the posing, they've got the suit, they took time, right, and put effort into what they're wearing. Does it match their skin? Their tan is a big deal. Like, just all of these things that you think are, I'm like, this is expensive for what? And it is for that entire package, for that, perfecting their craft and their art. And it is a huge difference. And those things can be your difference between, first and 10th or first and fifth. Easy. So I can now see, just looking at it from that lens, how important it is, to make all of those things, not just one or two or three, but all of those things a priority.
This episode is brought to you by Move Your Body Apparel, a Lexington-based, community-ran premium activewear brand that promotes the importance of daily movement. For the rest of the year, MYB is donating a percentage of every order to the Special Olympics of Kentucky. Save 20% off your first order with the link below, or use code TWR20 online at mybapparel.com. This episode is sponsored by Fountain TRT. A large percentage of men don't even know they're suffering from low T. Fountain wants to help you figure out if low T is your issue and help you get your levels back to a healthy range with a topical cream. The topical treatment is easy to use, just apply it once daily to your shoulder area. Most men start seeing results immediately. Check out Fountain TRT and use the link below to support the weight room and claim your $1 evaluation. This podcast is sponsored by Smoking Gun Coffee, a veteran-owned coffee company that strives to give back to those in need. Don't forget to use code TWR10 for a 10% discount at checkout. And is there, you mentioned all these things, but is there almost like a scale of importance, like that you would not necessarily, and maybe it is, but like, hey, the tan is 5% or 10%, whereas the posing is more like, 65%, and this is worth this to me. Like, is that a standard thing, or is that more of like a personal thing?
That is a personal thing for each individual judge, because we'll be sitting on the panel, and right, someone will prefer someone, maybe the tan isn't that big, their posing is that good that I'm okay with this tan, or this person is like, man, their confidence is great, I can't take my eyes off of them, so I'm okay that they're not at a lower body fat percentage than this person. So it is entire package. So that's complete personal preference for each judge. I mean, most of the time we're agreeing, but that is a personal preference. For me, posing and confidence, like that's, there's nothing like it. I love people seeing out there, seeing, you could tell when they're nervous. We understand that, but you could really tell when somebody's been practicing, they've been, really taking, this seriously, and they really attached a goal to it. And you can see that. I would be hard pressed to find someone who would disagree with me on that.
And being a pro, what is maybe something that when you got to that level, you just saw it like go to the next level? Obviously the physique, but like past that, like was there something in particular that stood out to like, oh my gosh, these people really do take this aspect more into consideration as far as the athletes go?
Yeah, you know what? This might sound weird, but their body work, like there's, yeah, like their, I don't want to say massage therapists, but there's all kinds of people that they work with that will help them like define, it'll tighten their muscles, it'll help define their muscles, it'll flush water out. I didn't know about any of that until I turned pro. They're like, you need to go see this. I'm like, what? I'm like, I can't go up to the Happy Feet place and just get a massage and have that be fine. But apparently not. Really, I mean, there's really ways that these specialists work to, like, you have water in your body one day and the next day you won't, or you'll have lines and no lines in your legs one day and they say you won't. So I that's something that I definitely started taking seriously as I turned pro, because there were significant differences. So I mean, there's obviously a lot of different things that they do, but that's just the one thing that like even now I'm still doing that, and I realize that because it's something that that's something that's continued. Like, I still go, maybe not as intense and things like that, but I still keep up with like chiropractic work and massages and things like that. So that's something that they really do take seriously, and it's beneficial. It's not, again, it's not anything that they're wasting money on or just feel like doing. That's something that's really helpful as well.
And having experience as a judge, what do you see like the if you want to call it like the average competitor, how has the average competitor changed just over the time that you've been a judge, and like what do you see it moving towards?
Um, I mean, when you can, well, what's okay, I see where it's going, but the first thing is you can just naturally you can see like Texas has a lot of shows, right? And a lot of people in Texas that compete in shows. So you'll see, one competitor from, I don't know, we'll take December of 2021, right? And then you'll see the same competitor in September of 2022, and you're just like, wow, that person has like they'll take your feedback, and like, this person has really, really, really changed. Now, what I will say is that it can be kind of tricky, right? In terms of not following the criteria, but it could change, right? It could be different depending upon what's in front of you, right? So maybe you don't have like, okay, my figure criteria, my wellness criteria is this, and this, right? If what I got is not up there, then I've got to start with like, this, okay, this is what's closest to that criteria. And then we'll go from there, because it's just realistically and honestly, just even based on genetics, that's not always going to be there for you. Like, okay, bam, there it is. Now we're going to decide everyone else. It might not, definitely might not always be there, but I feel like even in terms of muscularity definition, I do, especially on the pro level, I do feel like it's changing a little bit. There is a shift in terms of what, maybe when I started, what the criteria is. I do feel it's definitely different. Like if I got up there, it would be different. My physique would be, if it was my physique that the last competed with, if I tried to get up there with that now, I might not do so well. I might not do so well. If I got up there with my 2017 Olympia package, if I tried to do something like that now, probably wouldn't do as well, right? So I do feel like there's a little change in direction where, where it's going. I'm not sure, but to answer your question, I feel like there definitely has been a little bit of a shift in the criteria. But
And I was talking to somebody recently, and they mentioned that they are not really a huge fan of like, past maybe their first show, people doing multiple divisions. Not
Mhm.
what's your take on that?
And I do agree with that, because what I will agree with, and what we have encouraged competitors to do, is if they're like, hey, I'm not sure if am I bikini or wellness? Am I classic or am I 212? Am I, what, 212 or bodybuilding? Well, maybe you might know the difference between that, but to help them decide, hey, why don't you do bikini, do a wellness, like see where you fare. Hey, if you're getting a first place here, then you absolutely know where you belong. If you're getting a fifth place here, then you know what category you belong in. But if you're just up there just doing different things, just consistently, maybe not, because we're like, okay, this is the criteria. Although it could change, it's different for the division, and we want to stick to that, and we want to see that, right? So, and if you're like unsure, hey, we can provide feedback all day long. If you're like, hey, I'm unsure where I fit, hey, that's what we're here for. We can help you determine that, versus you wasting money, maybe even resources, doing multiple divisions, and because like it's expensive, right? So you're doing multiple divisions, multiple shows. But what we do encourage, if they're like, hey, I don't know where I fit, I don't know where I want to fit, I don't know where I want to go. Hey, get on there next to somebody who's in wellness. And then if that's what you want to do, we'll take it that direction, or get up there, next to somebody who is figure. And then, we can figure, we being you and your coach, can figure it out together. But in terms of just like consistently doing two shows, like, or multiple divisions all the time, that's not necessary, and that could get very expensive, especially if you're attaching yourself to a goal, which might be a pro card.
Right. And do you think it's harder in your experience, talking to people, being around bodybuilders, for men in particular or women in particular to know or figure out more quickly where they fit best?
So your question was it easier for men to figure out if they where they fit? Sorry, I want to make sure I answer the
Right.
question.
Men, do you think men or women maybe have an easier time, one or the other, kind of figuring out where they fit best?
You know what? I That's a great question. Um, I honestly, oof, that is a great question, because I'm referencing myself. I'm like, I immediately was like, hey, this is where I fit. But what I do think is it's getting more difficult as we continue to incorporate like more divisions. People are like, well, now what? Like, I thought I was this, but hey, I might look like this. So I think in that regard, as we continue to add more divisions, which I don't know if we are, it could get difficult just because the lines are so hairy, right? Like, you get a bikini competitor come up to wellness and the win, right? You've seen that happen, and you're like, what happened? I thought she was just bikini. So I could get like kind of skewed there. So I think as we incorporate divisions like that, it's going to get a little bit more difficult for I guess men and or women, I guess especially, to kind of figure out where it is that they belong.
And do you think men or women, maybe one has more of like I'm going to try to force myself in here because I want this body type more, whereas maybe men or women would be more like, I'm just going to accept what I have and work harder
I
on
feel
that.
like, and I'm not a male, right? So I wouldn't know, but I just, from my perspective, what I've seen, I feel like they're like, hey, I like the way this my wellness might look. So I'm gonna try and push, regardless if I have the genetics for stockier legs, you could say, I'm gonna try and do this. I'm gonna try and push for this. And then maybe the genetics aren't there, or I want to do bikini, so I'm going to try and lean out, do a bunch of cardio, do a bunch of this, and try and fit myself in this bikini box. And that's just my experience with working with past clients, and probably knowing, communicating, and having more of a connection and conversation with women who compete than men, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And being in the sport from different perspectives, different angles, how do you think like bodybuilding, people going to the same show maybe multiple times, how does that stay fresh for the competitor? How does that stay fresh for the sport to where like, hey, it's the same show, but this time it's like this is something new about it, or this is something unique about it, or this is something kind of, just something to get people excited because obviously you're on your own journey, when you're working out, when you're eating, when you're doing all the things, but then you come together and it's like, oh, this is the same as last year, kind of like how do you keep things fresh?
Sure. Well, the promoters do a really good job at, and I know a lot of them, they're very good friends, at offering really good like incentives. I mean, and let's be real, like people want nice, shiny, big things. I want a prize. I want a trip. I want a this. I want a that. So the promoters do a really good job of offering incentives. I know that a lot of the shows in Texas are run really well. So regardless of if it's the same show or if it's not show, or if it's different or something like that, they're going to do the show just because of how it's run, just because of what they provide, just because of who, maybe even who the promoter is, because people will follow. They're like, hey, I really love how Ed and Betty shows are run, and they give out these pretty rings, and they do this and do this, do all these things for the competitors that I really like. So I'm gonna do their show. So people are, it's an expense. And so people are, they're loyal to certain people, certain things, and then even places like, they add new locations. Hey, this is going to be in Galveston, pretty place to, well, I don't know how pretty, but nice place to vacation after your show. Hey, it's going to be in San Antonio, nice place to hang out after the show. These are the incentives. So the promoters do a good job of um, yeah, just offering different things and incentives for the competitors to stay engaged in their shows and to keep them coming back.
And have you seen anything over your time that has kind of evolved with the shows, got more, um, just made the shows better, or do you have any thoughts on like what could make shows even better, like in the future?
Yeah, so they've started having let's see, I'm trying to think of what I mean, because obviously they've evolved, but your question is like what specifically I've noticed, like, hey, this show has evolved like this. You could say something as even simple as backdrops or venues, or like a larger venue where the competitors are up on a screen. I know that Prince Harrison has a show in Shreveport, and he's got the big, you're on there on the screen. He's got the big backdrops, and the competitors love. That's like the Olympia, right? The competitors love that. Their families can come see, and you spend a lot of money on this. And so it could be something like stage time, giving them, more stage time, bringing in more divisions, allowing the competitors to, maybe they can do a routine in the morning and in the night or something like that. So it's just evolved in different ways. Like, again, promoters have done a really good job of incorporating things in their shows. Again, like the big screen, that's nice. Everybody likes that. Like a bigger venue, more people can fit, more people can come see you. It feels like a little different than maybe a smaller venue that might seat 200 or something like that. So it's definitely evolved in terms of making the shows more of a production. If you could say, making the competitive priority again, like this is very, very expensive. People put a lot of time and money and effort. And then even things from like bringing in like big name photographers, from the pro league. They used to only take pictures of pros. Hey, now they're coming to the amateur level, and you're getting the same kind of type of treatment, as you could say. You're having the ability to have your pictures taken by this person or that. So they're offering there's just a lot of things that have been happening over the course of the years that are really kind of enticing competitors to kind of come in and do more shows. And then they're creating more shows as well, right? When I first started, there was 12. Now there is like 12 in 1 month. I don't know. Just kidding. But there might be like 24 now, to at least 2 a month, at least minimum 2 months. So now they're having more opportunities to do more shows and what they're going to do. So.
And is bodybuilding a, you know, of course, during COVID it wasn't, but do you think it's strictly going to be just traditionally and continuing an indoor event, or do you see like the potential for that, like a nighttime show, putting, obviously within the sun it might be difficult with the lights
Yeah.
and things, but having like that outdoor environment I feel like would be kind of cool in some places, some environments. Does that have you ever heard of any talks on that, or like anybody mention that?
You know what? I haven't. I think that would be neat, though. I would be curious to see how, like you mentioned with the tan, I would be curious as to see. I mean, obviously, the climate would have to be somewhat mild, and not too hot, right, or not too humid, because obviously that would be doing a lot of like dripping, and you do get very hot due to certain things that you may or may not be exposed to on show day. So that's very interesting. If they would have like an outdoor, I haven't heard anything about that, but that would definitely be very interesting.
And kind of going back a little bit, you were talking about being an expediter.
Yeah.
Did you ever have any like funny things happen? People just doing funny things, saying funny things, or like they had no idea what to do. You had to really guide them along. Like I'm sure with people's first show, you had definitely interesting things happen.
Yeah. And what happens more often than it doesn't is people they leave and they don't come back, and so they'll miss their class. And so you'll hear promoters and judges, say, express the importance of, hey, when you get there, do not go anywhere. Like check the schedule and do not go anywhere. That's I mean, it's not funny. That's actually probably the worst thing that can happen, because if you've missed that, you've missed that. And there's nothing that you could do about it, because that is your responsibility. So we try and our hardest to say, hey, the night before, once you get here, do not leave for any reason. If you need to go get something, have someone get it for you. If you need to, if you need anything, have someone get that for you. So we've seen that happen. I would say at least at least almost once every show, someone misses a class. Someone will miss it.
Wow.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you coming on the podcast. It was really cool getting to talk to you.